Hi, everybody. Welcome back or welcome to another episode of Ship It and Sip It. This week, I'm excited to have a series of interviews with the founders that we are helping in the first cohort of the Paralect Startup Bootcamp. And one of those founders is Sam Cholera. Welcome to the show, Sam. How's your Friday?
Going really well, thank you, John. Thanks for asking. We're winning today, so can't complain with that.
Fantastic. It's great to see founders winning. So your startup idea that you've entered into the bootcamp with is called PT Fitness. Tell us a little bit about the idea itself.
No problem at all. So PT Fitness Coach is essentially an exclusive community for personal trainers and fitness professionals to grow their business.
Right on. And where did the inspiration for this product come from?
Just prior to COVID, so I'm type 2 diabetic, and I just decided just before COVID that I wanted to get some more exercise in, and my form of exercise, my chosen form of exercise, was going to the gym. So I started going into the gym, realised after about 4 or 5 months, realised quite quickly that I was going nowhere at all, just going around in circles. So I employed the use of a personal trainer. COVID hit and I went back to doing zero again. As COVID then let go, I went back into the gym, picked up what I'll say where I was, started again, but with the personal trainer, and realised just how far I'm actually getting, and was appreciative that not only what I was learning, how I was changing, how my mindset was changing, but they put years on my life. They just changed everything about what I was doing and how I was doing it in the gym and outside of the gym, and have kept me on earth, for longer years of my kids. So I always had an entrepreneurial mind, and I was just seeing loads of gaps in the market, and I started speaking to the personal trainers at that particular gym, and just started noting down in a book of things that they weren't getting, that the environment that they were working in wasn't providing for them. And one thing led to another. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and everything just seemed to be popping out to me, that what sort of things they didn't have access to, and that led me to here.
Right on. So I guess I'm very curious about this. I've been going to the gym and exercising myself, and I haven't used a personal trainer, but it does seem to me, I know quite a few coaches, running coaches, things like that. So I'm very interested in the space. It seems that everybody sort of uses a mishmash of messenger apps to communicate with clients, gets paid in cash or Venmo or whatever payment app. So what is the specific solution or pain point that you want to kind of tackle first?
The first thing I wanted to do is that what I noticed within the gym environment is that the personal trainers, they may all be friends, but they don't share their top secret. Now, for me in life, I always like to think that for my top secret in life, whatever that might be, if I give that top secret to 100 people, chances are, and most entrepreneurs know, VCs would know that people don't action that advice. They take it in, goes one ear and out the other. So me giving one piece of advice to 100 people, not going to affect my life or my business in any way. But if 100 people give me their top piece of advice and I implemented even a portion of it, anything I'm doing is going to go through the roof. So the same principle going back to personal trainers, if I'm able to create a community where they can help themselves, they can ask the questions. You might have a particular personal trainer who has a long-standing client, 5 days a week, first thing in the morning, let's say 7 a.m. in the morning. But 4 out of 5 Mondays, the guy cancels. And when them cancelling, it's great. The personal trainer still gets paid, but they have to wake up early. They have to get into work early. They have to be ready. And then they're sitting around normally twiddling their thumbs. So what could they do about that? Now, I don't have the answer because I'm not a personal trainer and I haven't come across these problems. Personal trainers around the world will have the answer on how to overcome this. So the idea is to create a safe environment where they can ask each other questions and learn from each other. Like with anything, you mentioned about not having a personal trainer before. After having used a personal trainer, I see it as like sending your child to school but with no teachers. They might have everything there, the books, the computers, the environment to work in, but where they're going to get to the end, get to their exams, it's just going to be all a lot slower. If you've got the right people, the experts to help you in any particular industry, you're already winning and you're halfway there. So that was the idea, is to create a safe environment where personal trainers who walk out and have their certificate, they've just qualified as a personal trainer, level 1, level 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be, walk out of the school, have a certificate in their hand, get into a gym environment, and then it's rabbit in headlights, got no idea what to do because they don't know how to implement a business strategy into the personal training environment. So the idea was to create a safe space that everyone can grow, whatever stages they're at within their personal training career, can grow and take that further.
Interesting. So what other solutions have you looked at in this space, and why do you think that they don't fit the needs of personal trainers right now?
So there are some communities online. I personally, in business, whenever I look at something, I like it when there's competitors out there. One, it keeps you on your toes, but two, you can see what they're doing and not doing right. I like to look at problems and tend to reverse engineer and find out why it's not working for everybody or for the majority of people. I don't believe that you can ever create a solution for everybody. If you look down that route and trying to make sure it's correct but absolutely everybody, you're not making it right for anybody at all. So there are Facebook groups. A lot of demographic don't use Facebook. I mean, most people probably as a majority under the age of probably 35 to 40 are not on Facebook at all. Might be on Instagram, but not there. There are other groups on LinkedIn, but again, LinkedIn, most personal trainers are not on LinkedIn as a percentage. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be trying to help them with, because I do use LinkedIn a lot, and that's where their user persona is for their clients. And that we're using, and the other thing that they tend to have experts, if you like, in inverted commas, mentors, where personal trainers are then paying thousands of pounds to find out the information from one particular person. And if you're going to find it out from one person, it's always going to be through rose-tinted glasses and through one perspective. So my idea was create an environment where they can communicate and network with each other globally. And nowadays, that is, having a community environment and making them feel it's a safe space for them just to let go and ask what they believe might be the silliest question. But chances are that if they're thinking that question, there's thousands and thousands of other personal trainers who have exactly the same problem.
Right on. And according to what you've shared so far, just this week on Twitter, you've been going out and talking with PTs directly, probably also at the gym that you go to. So have you gotten any feedback so far on the idea, and what was that like?
That was good. I mean, it's always, I'm always one to not try and sell the features, go with the benefits, and just trying to find out what sort of problems that they're actually encountering. Personal trainers generally are individuals. They're, not normally coming in as a group from any particular, as a company. So everyone has different perspective. If I'm speaking to a 20-year-old personal trainer, they've got totally different problems to a 42-year-old personal trainer. The older generation generally might not be using social media as much to gain a new audience. And the younger generation may be using social media but don't know how to gain a new audience. So they all came in totally different problems. You mentioned one way about being paid. Some people are paid in cash. Some people are paid in PayPal. I've had one personal trainer reach out and said, I'd like to start accepting Bitcoin. I've had other personal trainers say when new clients come on board, I sign them up via WhatsApp and there's no terms and conditions there. Other personal trainers say, how do I keep my clients motivated? So there's a whole breadth of problems. Speaking to them face to face, so this is always difficult, quite expensive to be walking into gyms every day, different gyms. And the other problem I've had with doing this is personal trainers, as a rule, so I found anyway, would normally have clients back to back. So starting out at 7 a.m, going right through till lunch. They then have that 20-minute, half-hour, 1 hour window. And if they're normally training themselves, that they're hungry, so they want to eat at that time. They don't want to be talking to me. So, I've had problems in walking around and just speaking to trainers, and like with anything, when you've got a 2-minute window, it's really hard to find out what their problems are because their first instinct is you're selling to me.
Right.
So, but I've had some joy with it. But yeah, we still carry on. I don't mind knocking on doors.
That's great to hear. So you've mentioned a few times that you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So where do you think that came from? Have you always wanted to be sort of a startup founder?
Yes, I believe so without realizing it. So my father had his own, he was working a 9 to 5, and he had his own business as well. When I first went to university at the age of 19, I went in to study law and marketing. And the first time I went, the first university was economics, apologies. And at the age of 19 at university, I started a business there. I then, after 2 years, I was living away at the first university. My parents pulled me back home and said, look, you're just wasting time and money here. So stay at home and go. So I went to a second university, started a second business there. And there, it went from there, pulled out of that university. And since then, I've always been working for myself.
Right on. A part of the core tenets of the startup bootcamp that we have is building in public with your ideas. So what was your impression of that idea? Did that always excite you, or how did you feel about it?
Building in public. I've never been one for the camera. I feel like I've got a face for radio rather than TV. So building in public is quite difficult. And my family will attest to that point. I'm just generally not in any photographs at all. So was the rest of the family and behind the camera, not in front of it. So that was a challenging point. However, I tend to find that I thrive when my back's against the wall. So I come out fighting like that. So if that's what it takes and the position I've been put in, I've got no problem in, it's sink or swim for me with anything I do. So I like to win, so swimming's the way I go forward. So building in public has been difficult, but it does also keep you accountable. If you have to be doing certain things and you're out there, if I'm posting daily on Twitter, for example, I've started labeling my tweets day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. I can't cheat that. I can't ask Twitter to change their timestamps on the tweets. If they are what they are, I'm posting whenever I'm able to post.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And just like fitness, I guess consistency is rewarded in this game as well. So when I think about fitness and training, this group can be quite tribal. They're the CrossFit people. There are many different groups of trainers. So how do you think you're going to sort of break into this, each one? Are you targeting one group first, or what's your plan there?
So targeting face-to-face trainers first, so in a gym setting, and then online trainers with, in terms of, like you said, CrossFit trainers or strength trainers with resistance training. Still very similar problems they had because they all want to grow their business and they all deal with clients. So the type of training they do doesn't really matter to me too much. It's a matter of how do they get over the hurdle of more clients, newer clients, a longer tenure for the clients that they're working with. So what I want to do is, as everyone knows, the adoption of technology has just gone through the roof since COVID. So the idea of a face-to-face trainer using having online clients, having then clients globally. So if a personal trainer in any particular town, if you think about their a captive audience is probably within 5-mile radius. You're probably not going to find people traveling too far because everyone's busy nowadays and traveling in can take a long time. And no one has time anymore. So the idea is to help the face-to-face trainers with their problems. And then from there, show them the benefits of actually using their time not more wisely, but using their time in a different way to actually look at online training and helping people globally. Instead of having a captive audience of 5 miles, they've got a captive audience of anyone online. So just showing them the benefits there. I'm speaking to some trainers who deal with online clients and face-to-face. They've got hundreds of customers and clients globally. Whereas a face-to-face client may have, literally a handful maybe. So the idea is to start small, start in a niche, face-to-face trainers, wherever they are in their career, whether they just started, whether they're a veteran of the industry, and then eventually move in and then try and get to the next stage, online clients, and bring them all in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm most familiar with sort of endurance sports like running and cycling. And in that space, because of the GPS watches and the easy trackability of the activity, people sort of scale their coaching or their training up globally quite easily because everybody's running and you get the same files no matter if you ran next door, if you ran halfway around the world from each workout. But with gym going, it seems a bit that face-to-face is much more important in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, what you'll find is online trainers nowadays, the good ones, what they'll do is that with your onboarding form, they'll not only ask you what you're doing on a daily basis, in terms of what type of work you do, whether you're sitting down, standing, how many steps you're doing, an idea of what you're eating, but they'll also ask you what type of equipment, again, this is in a gym environment, what type of equipment you're using and what that you have available to you. It could be stuff you've got at home, it could be the actual machines that are in the gym, and the good ones will be tailoring their program based on what you have available. That's the online side. Obviously, the face-to-face becomes a lot easier because they're helping their clients with the equipment that they've got around them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will save a few questions for our next interview. We plan to have at least one, probably two, follow-up interviews with you, Sam. So it's been great to hear about your idea. Any reflections from the first week of the boot camp?
Really liked it. I mean, everyone at Paralect has just been amazing. They've left the door open for us to knock on virtually, but left the door open for us to knock on if we've got any questions. Again, didn't seem how silly the questions are. I'm not sure how many silly questions I've posted, but they've left the door open for us to ask anything. And the idea is that the impression I've got is that they're really here to help us grow as a founder and as a company. I understand only one of us would be lucky enough to have an MVP built, and I'm working towards being that company. But either or, I know that over the next 30 days of a month-long program, I will have grown. So I know that I'm getting huge benefit from being part of this cohort.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. We'll be sure to put links to your landing page and your social profiles in the description of this show and share it with the rest of our community when this goes live. So thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely Friday evening and a lovely weekend, Sam. See you next time.
Thank you for your time, John. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special interview with James Hutchinson. He's the founder of Lingoers, and he's also part of the first cohort of the Paralect Startup Bootcamp, which is just wrapping up its first week. James, how are you doing today?
Not bad, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. We just released an interview with Chris Fernandez, who is one of the organizers of the bootcamp. So I'm excited now to get a chance to talk to all of the founders and find out more about their idea, what inspired it, and what they hope to get out of the bootcamp. So for Lingoers, can you just start us off with a simple description of the idea?
Yeah, no worries. So an elevator pitch, basically. So I suppose it stemmed from when I had an issue when I returned back to the UK. I lived in Valencia, in Spain for my Erasmus year, and since returning back, I found it's really hard to practice a language when you're not living in the country. So Lingoers is basically a social language app that connects native speakers via video calls. It's essentially a social media app, but it would work differently to the rest of the language apps available.
Right. So there are quite a few apps for learning languages out there. I'm sure. Have you used some? Are there aspects of certain ones that you like or ideas that you might sort of pull from them?
Yeah, so I've used pretty much all of the ones that I've Googled, basically, like HelloTalk, iTalki, Duolingo, Memrise, all of them. Some of them are like exercises with words and phrases, like Duolingo, for example. It's good for the absolute basics, like I have an apple in Italian. I covered that when trying to learn Italian. But I haven't found myself saying to someone, I have an apple. It's not really that needed. So although they're really good for the basics, I think that having conversations like, hi, I'm James, I live here, this is what I do for a living, that's much better. And I found that it's more conversational, and a lot of apps that exist already are text-based chatting. And when you're on holiday or when you're out and about, you don't type to people, you speak. You obviously speak and use your voice, and you try and listen to what people are saying. And those apps don't really teach you that. So, because I've tried it again, and whenever I've been on holiday in Spain, someone says something to me, and I'm like, I'm not used to this. I'm used to seeing it written down and thinking about it, and then replying, maybe cheating using Google Translate. But yeah. So I think it doesn't focus on the basics of language learning, which is having conversations in real time.
Yeah, that kind of mirrors my experience as well. I've been living in countries that don't speak English for a lot of my adult life. And I just, I memorized this is my guitar or this is a motor. But those are things that I don't ever need in day-to-day life.
Truly.
So were there any other inspirations for the product? And you mentioned the sort of going to be social, sort of like a type of social media. So what's your vision for that?
Yeah, it's funny because I had the idea, I think because I came back from Spain in 2014 after my Erasmus year, 9 months. I went there knowing nothing, like 1 to 10 and gracias in Spanish. And I was like, and then by the end of it, I was okay at Spanish. I could have a conversation. But then myself and a friend initially had to go at making the idea. And I bumped into Stephen Bartlett, who you might know from Social Chain. And I went to one of his talks at Manchester Met University in about 2017. And I said to him, I have this idea for a website where you can learn languages. And he said to me, why not use an app, a mobile app? And I was like, okay. And it seems very simple, but a lot of what he does has inspired me. So he's an inspiration, I would say. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question, if I'm not waffling on.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So have you always wanted to be a startup founder? Let's give a little bit of your background real quick. A lot of people have ideas for, I could make this app, I could make this product. But has it always been something for you where you thought, I'm going to be a founder someday?
I think for me, it's not a case of being a founder. It's a case of I only try and solve problems that I've experienced myself because I think that I'd be the perfect fit. And if it's good for me, maybe other people will want it as well. So I've had ideas in the past, one to do with music, because the music industry is hard to get noticed unless you're known. But then this one is something, because my girlfriend is Italian and her family lives in Italy. She lives near me. But her family's in Italy, and I went over to Italy to visit her family and just sat around the table listening to her mum and her family talk in Italian. And I was like, wow. And I could sort of guess what they were talking about because they use their hands and gestures, and it's much easier. And I was like, if only I was living here, it'd be so much easier. But I had to return to the UK, unfortunately, due to work and everything. But yeah, so I think I originally wanted to be a commercial pilot when I was younger. So I went to university, did aircraft engineering. So it's completely unrelated. But as part of that, I had a year abroad, so my Erasmus year. I didn't expect it. I ticked Spain on the form that you had, and it so happened that myself and a course mate went over to Spain. It's a place called Castellón de la Plana, and went to university there to study engineering. And sat in the first lecture, it was all in Spanish. I was like, what the hell is going on? I've no idea what's being said. And then the teacher was like, engineers, which is like, do you understand? And I was like, no. And she tried explaining it again in Spanish, thinking I understood Spanish, but not the answer. So I was like, no, soy inglés, lo siento. So I was like, no, I'm English, I'm sorry. And she's like, okay. So she left me alone. But that inspired me to think, right, I could really make use of this 9 months living in Spain. And I took Spanish lessons. I went on nights out, had a few drinks, and I think that's a good way of. I'm not promoting alcohol, but I think for socializing, it is a good way of learning another language. And I want to sort of replicate that for me, and hopefully for others as well. So you don't have to live in Spain, you don't have to quit your job, sell your house, and go to another country. So that's my goal really. So I didn't think of myself as a founder. I just think of myself as someone trying to solve a problem, and if it so happens to be solved via the use of the startup, then so be it.
Right on. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So far, could you share a bit about the progress with the idea so far? Obviously, the Startup Bootcamp is for very early stage ideas and founders like yourself. But have you bounced the idea off other people? Have you gotten any feedback from other language learners that sort of confirm that they have the same problem?
Yeah, so a few years ago, the first time I tried to solve this problem, I had messages on Facebook saying, because I used to post a lot on Facebook groups, and I still do now, saying, look, join this is the idea. And a lot of people have been saying, oh yeah, I really like this idea because it's really hard for me to learn. And a lot of people, considering the amount of language apps that are available to use, a lot of people are still struggling. So I think there is a slight disconnect between language apps and actually being fluent in something. So yeah, I'm in terms of progress so far, I've been I'm growing my user panel so far using the landing page provided by the Bootcamp, which I have to say is amazing. It's so easy, and it integrates to social media as well, which I really like. But yeah, I've had qualitative feedback, so thoughts and feelings from people who I know, from my girlfriend, from international friends that I have as well. That I went to an international university. I went to Salford University, and I still have friends that I'm in touch with now. So Spanish, Romanian, Italian. So yeah, I've had good feedback from them saying, yeah, I like the idea, and they've been signing up. So hopefully they're going to be the people who I speak to in my user panel for the early stage feedback.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a great start. Let's see. One of the core tenets of the bootcamp that we're doing with the founders is to build in public. And you've already mentioned the landing page, the Momentum product that Eager has shared with you guys. It's also its own very early startup, but as you said, it works very well with social media. But one of the main tenets is to build in public as a founder. So my question is, I guess, two-part. What do you think about this approach? And second, how do you think it will help you sort of refine the idea for Lingoers?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people sort of think, oh, I don't want to share my idea because other people can steal it. But having tried and attempted different startups myself, it's really hard. It's not a case of stealing like a pint of milk from someone. A weird analogy, I know, but it takes a lot of effort, grit, determination, and time. And I think even if I post, like I am posting about the idea on a regular basis, and I've not seen the problem being solved so far. I suppose if someone else did come up with a solution, then I wouldn't have to build a startup around it. I'm only building it because it doesn't exist. So I think that in the olden days, like before the internet was a big thing, software companies had to develop in the dark and had to spend like a year developing something because there's no way of doing it otherwise. But nowadays, I think that you've got so much competition, you have to build an exact thing for the user. And if you don't know exactly who the user is or what their pain points are, I think it's very difficult because you're guessing a lot and you've got a lot of assumptions that might be wrong. I might think that this is a solution, but based on speaking with people, building in public, they might say, oh no, I think it's this. Like there's a better way of doing it. So I think feedback from users, even before you've even built anything, which is the case with Lingoers, like nothing exists yet for Lingoers. But part of the excitement is sharing my journey, asking people feedback along the way and changing, pivoting according to where the market is.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to following your journey along that path. In terms of language learning apps, one thing that at least Duolingo does really well is sort of, it kind of bugs you. It kind of has this stickiness to the app with a little owl that gives you updates and kind of harasses you to keep studying. Are there any sort of, I guess it's a viral loop that you're thinking about to keep people engaged when Lingoers launches? Because, you know, consistent practice is very important, not only for startup building, but also for learning languages. So do you have any ideas around that?
Yeah, very good point. So there's a book, I think it's by Nir Eyal, called Hooked, and basically it involves trigger, action, variable reward, and investment. And that's taken from a lot of startups have made it from Silicon Valley, where basically I can see it. If you think about Instagram, you get a notification, that's a trigger, action, you just click it, variable reward, you don't know what you're going to see on your newsfeed, you have to refresh it. And it's like a slot machine in a casino, really, isn't it? And then the investment is I might get a message from a friend. If I delete Instagram, I'm out of the loop. and obviously you've got all your photos and everything on it. So yeah, so I'm using those principles as much as possible to help build Lingoers. But in terms of consistency, that I think is one of the main blockers for why it's hard to learn a language. So I have a few ideas of what I'm going to do with that. Just concepts in my head at the moment. It might be different, but in terms of regularity, every Monday or every Wednesday at a certain time, different groups where, say, you've got a friendship group in a certain session, and that session is 6 p.m. on every Monday or every Wednesday or something, and it's a regularity, because that's how I learned. That's how I was learning Spanish in Spain, by going to a regular language lesson. So if I can replicate that, and also have notifications, ability to add friends or people you get on with within the app, there's so many different things which you can incorporate from that hooked model into software. So
yeah, and it seems like it's really good timing on this. At least from my perspective, I know a lot of people here who are teaching English. I used to teach English here as well, and sort of since the pandemic, that sort of language, that business model kind of fell apart a bit because they couldn't do in-person classes safely anymore. They had to, those that weren't very technically savvy had to quickly learn, or those that were very technically savvy quickly pivoted to online lessons with people. So I think maybe there is a pretty large group of people that's already sort of ready for some sort of product or social group or app like Lingoers to sort of give them that platform.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the pandemic was hard for everyone, and especially when you wanted to. I think the motivation to learn a language wasn't there because you couldn't travel. A lot of the time, I've heard, like, in language lessons that I've done, especially trying to learn Italian. I'm really basic at that at the moment. But I asked people, why do you want to learn Italian? And people, they sort of said, oh, we're going to Rome this summer for a 2-week holiday. And if that's their goal, then so be it. But during the pandemic, people couldn't travel, so they didn't have that. So it was a lot more difficult, I think. However, you could still practice on the app. Just you have to have a big enough reason why you want to start and what you want to do it for, I think. But I think the timing now is good because, I mean, like, the pandemic's pretty much, it's the endemic, isn't it, really? It's never going to be over, but you can travel again now. So I personally, since visiting my girlfriend's family in Italy, in Imperia, quite north of Italy, I since sort of not understanding what they were saying and wanting to understand it, I was like, right, as soon as I get home, I'm going to start taking Italian lessons. And I've been using Preply, which I have to pay for on an hourly basis. It's like a school, but more relaxed, because it's just every teacher, it can just be a normal native speaker teaching, so it's more fun. But I still think that's not quite the solution. That's part of it, but it's not the full solution. I think there's something missing, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been an enlightening conversation, and I look forward to following up and finding out what you figure out as the boot camp goes along. So till next time, we plan to have probably one or at least two more interviews with each founder from the boot camp. So I look forward to catching up with you in a couple weeks, James, and seeing the progress that you make with Lingoers. Thank you so much for your time.
Cheers. It's been great chatting. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another interview with the founders that are going through Paralect's first batch of the Bootcamp. I'm here today with Chris and Joe from Myne. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hey, all good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really good. Good to meet you as well, John. Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about the idea of Myne, and we'll get into why in a little bit. But to start off with, can one of you just give me a one-line sort of elevator pitch to the idea?
Yeah, so the idea for Myne is basically it's a platform where we aim to make property investing more accessible by allowing users to kind of pool their money and buy a single property. And we'll typically kind of focus on short-term rental properties.
Okay, and what was the inspiration for the idea? And the second part of that question is, why is it a good time now in 2023 to build it?
Chris, you want to take the first part of that question?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So yeah, the kind of idea came from, so a while ago I had a flat, we were in the process of selling our flat, and we couldn't, it sold and then it fell through, and then kind of COVID happened. So for one reason or another, we decided to keep it. We were able to move to a house we were buying, but we had this flat kind of sitting there and we couldn't get rid of it at the time. So that's when we kind of looked into Airbnb as a potential option for us. So we put it on there, and it was kind of one of those things where we didn't really expect it to go anywhere. We were like, we live in like kind of quite a little town just outside of Cardiff, so there's, and I grew up here, so it was kind of like, I don't think anyone would want to stay here, but I'll give it a go. And to our surprise, it was we were booked flat out after putting it on, and so then we kind of went through the process of kept doing it, trying to improve our ratings and make it a better experience for people by kind of being better hosts. And it was a really cool process. I really enjoyed it, got a lot from it. And it actually was quite profitable because there's less wear and tear on the property, like normal rentals. People don't come to an Airbnb to stay in the apartment the whole time. Typically, they kind of want to go out and explore the area. And also they pay a lot more for a weekend away than they typically would a nightly rate for the place that they live in, kind of thing. So it was amazing opportunity. And it's something we had to sell the flat, unfortunately. But then I've realized from that experience that it's quite difficult it's a great investment, but it's very difficult to kind of get into that unless you have the upfront capital, and the time to manage the property. It's difficult, and this is where then the idea came from, that there's a bit of a gap here that potentially we could fill. Joe, do you want to take the second part?
Yeah, why now?
So I guess the why now, always quite a hard question to answer, but one of the kind of main factors and trends we've kind of seen shifting is the rise in the number of retail investors. So if you look at the kind of data from the last 10 years about the kind of total number of equities traded, so 10 years ago in 2011, it was about 11%, but now retail investors make up about 25% of the total number of stocks and shares traded. So really, I think it kind of just goes down to show that the everyday person is becoming more financially literate and looking to effectively invest their money in different options. Obviously, stocks and shares being one of those, cryptocurrencies and commodities being others. But really, the access and the ability to invest in property has a really high barrier to entry. A deposit alone could be in the thousands of pounds. So that's kind of why I think now is the right time to look at building Myne and democratizing the access to investing in properties, and obviously starting in the UK.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. I guess since this is the first co-founding team that we have, that I've interviewed so far in these interviews, how did you guys meet? Can you share a little bit of background, and how did you decide to sort of work together on Myne?
Yeah, sure. So it's quite a good story, actually, I think. So I kind of had this idea, no real experience of the startup industry. My background's in design. So I was kind of all up for kind of creating some mock-ups and that kind of thing. But then it was like, okay, where do I go with this now? So I actually came across another accelerator program last year and applied, and the first person I spoke to actually was Joe. And so kind of went onto that program. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere to do with the timing. Then a few months after that, kind of we kept in touch. And originally it was kind of Joe was helping me out, giving me advice and being the sounding board. And then, a few months ago, we kind of decided to team up on this.
Worked with Chris on this idea for a number of months. Always been that kind of sounding board, kind of providing more general advice. But it was always one that I enjoyed the most and found the most interesting, and you could kind of see myself working on it potentially in the future. And kind of just happened that everything kind of aligned at the perfect time, and then Chris and I just kind of decided to formally move forward with this, and then hence we came on the Paralect Bootcamp.
All right. Speaking of the bootcamp, I guess, how do you think that it will help you to push the idea forward? Are there any specific things that you're hoping to learn in the process or get out of the program itself?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's lots of things that we really do want to get out of this. But really it's to validate the foundations of the idea and actually prove that we feel the problem, and a number of other people that we've spoken to feel the problem about the ability to invest in property is difficult. It's got a really high barrier to entry. We want to start testing some different solutions and some different concepts with the people that we've started speaking to really prove that this idea has legs and can go further.
And I think one of the other important things is to kind of build that list, because it's kind of a bit of a chicken and egg problem with our product. Is we need people and investors to ideally go out and purchase the first property. But then before we have the first property, people might be less kind of willing to invest before that. So it's about kind of building these relationships early on, building a list of people that when we're ready to and we're in a good place, then we can kind of take their investment and then make a purchase with it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space. And I guess I'm curious if you guys have any ideas around this. Like, this seems like something that would make sense for Airbnb to create within their own platform, or to create in-house and sort of add in as a feature. So in that vein, are there any other existing solutions that you've looked at on the market?
Like, I guess maybe it makes sense for Airbnb to put a feature like this in, but they've got such a strong value proposition themselves in just taking the commissions from the rentals that there's almost no need to venture down the ownership route. So I think that's probably the main reason why Airbnb haven't ventured down this route. In terms of other ways of investing, people can own timeshares, for example, and timeshares are great if you want to have access to the property. But the kind of main feature, the main benefit of Myne is not the access to the property, but it's the rental income and the growth in the equity, that you would see over the course of a number of years in that property as well. So timeshares are great that you get access to the property, but you don't get the rental income, whereas Myne will allow people to get the rental income. So it's more of a financial product than something that you would use to holiday in or take a vacation or something.
And there are other platforms that do a similar thing, so that you can invest in like a normal residential apartment block, for example, and you'll get rental income from that. But like from kind of our experience and having an Airbnb before, you don't make as much. People tend to pay more for their short-term rentals than they do their rent on a per nightly basis. So it's just kind of a bit of an untapped asset that's kind of a lot more profitable. And obviously it depends on like location. It's not every Airbnb is going to be the same, and that's where our expertise as well of making sure we're investing in the right places that will be profitable locations. That's where they'll come to add value to the end user as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting market, and it sort of seems to change a lot. Airbnb used to be very popular. Now it's sort of getting a bit of flack kind of from all sides. People are saying that the fees are so high, the fees that they add on. Neighborhoods are saying, this is negatively impacting sort of the community we have here, just because everything is turned into short-term rentals that's driving up rental prices sort of across communities. What trends do you see there, and how do you think that Myne can sort of navigate this? Although it's kind of a touchy subject in terms of community and housing.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, Airbnb is maybe taking a bit of the flack, but we're not necessarily only going to be putting these properties on Airbnb. You know, it's about the kind of short-term rental market rather than Airbnb's market. Of course, they own a big share of that market, so of course it would be used. But the great thing about Airbnb is that it allows investment into areas which generally wouldn't see tourism. You know, if you've got family in a certain area, there's not always a big hotel nearby, but there quite often is an Airbnb nearby. So it can really boost the kind of tourism and industry of areas that haven't seen it particularly as much in the past, where hotels may have put themselves. So I guess with everything, there's positives and negatives. So it's kind of weighing up to that act.
And look, I also think, just to add to that, I think we're going to see a trend in, there's going to be a lot more people coming onto the platform and putting their own properties on there. I mean, we're in a cost of living crisis now. People are looking for other ways to make income, and this means that, you know, your spare bedroom that you're not using anymore could actually be a source for income for you. So I do think we're going to see a trend of more people going to the platform, maybe single rooms rather than entire properties. But I think that will kind of, I can't see it going anywhere anytime soon, put it that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting space for sure. And my wife and I used to be super hosts when we lived in Arizona. We lived in Flagstaff, which is quite close to the Grand Canyon. So we did a similar thing. This was back in early days before it was super popular. Took some crappy cell phone pictures, immediately got booked, and basically were booked straight through for a couple years. It was quite
nice.
fun and challenging at the same time. But it's an interesting experience for sure. All right, let's get back to the boot camp though. One of our core tenets in the program is to have founders build their traction and build out their idea in public. How do you guys think about that approach? And did it excite you? Did it make you nervous? How do you feel?
Personally, you know, it's exciting. We're coming on to an accelerator program. I've delivered numerous accelerator programs in the past before. I've never been on the receiving end of that. So my first time coming out into one of these accelerators as a customer, shall we say, it's really exciting. And, you know, I've learned a lot about how I've delivered them in the past compared to how I'm receiving it now. So yeah, it's great. And the building in public part, you know, there's always an element of nervousness when you're going live with your idea that you've kind of been sat on mulling over in your own head for so long. You know, I think it's brilliant, but by going public, it really allows you to get open and honest feedback from people that you wouldn't necessarily get that feedback from. So while it definitely has its challenges, I think it's, you know, really, really worth it, and it can massively benefit you as a startup founder.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think the kind of building in public piece is kind of a bit of accountability that you need to kind of stick with any kind of project. I think that's kind of where I was struggling when it was just me and I had an idea kind of thing. Whereas so then working with Joe, it was that kind of accountability to another person that I needed. Seeing them with the bootcamp now, you have an accountability to the others. And then when you kind of go public with it and you start telling people about it, you kind of don't want it to just be one thing I posted once and then everyone's like, oh yeah, here he goes again. It's got to be something that I got to, you know, walk the walk, you know.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess just to wrap up, I'd like to share the page that you guys made on Momentum, or at least a part of it, and get a little bit of feedback on that and sort of show people what they can expect. So here I've just scrolled down to the benefits of Myne, and you've got browse, invest, and earn there. What was your experience like just making this simple landing page? And yeah, what do you think of Momentum?
Yeah, I think it's a really great product. It's kind of something I've been looking for before this. It's just something where you can kind of put the information in, the kind of formats in place. You haven't got to, be guessing about what should be in what area. It was super easy to kind of use. Really impressed with it.
Awesome. All right. Well, people can check that out. I'll drop the link to the page itself in the show notes. So that's all the questions I have for today. I look forward to talking with both of you guys later during the program. We plan to do like 2 more interviews. So good luck in the second week of the bootcamp, and I'll be in touch.
Cheers. Thanks, John.
Cheers, John.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I have another very exciting founder interview for you today. I'm here with Andrew from City Guide, and we're going to talk about his idea for an app or a product that's going to make traveling easier in the cities that we all love to visit. Andrew, how are you today?
Hi, John. Nice to meet you. I am perfect today, ready for new challenges and a nice conversation with you.
All right, you have just joined the first batch of the Paralect Startup Bootcamp, and you are late edition, but we're glad to have you in the first cohort. Can you tell us just briefly about the idea for your product?
Sure. In a few words, it's a marketplace for city trails from a local people. Because it's a problem for me and for my friends, and also for some people with whom I had the interview to find out what to do in new cities and don't spend a lot of time to Googling. So I decided to make this app to make it more easy, more fun, and without stress. And also I know about that the city tourist people spend in one city around 3 days, so they can keep their time to explore new places.
For sure. 3 days, I would say, is the minimum for any very interesting city that you've never been to before, at least. You mentioned there that it's going to be built around trails, so it's not just about sort of monuments or the best restaurants. What do you mean by that, and will it be sort of like guided tours that people can access?
That's what I mean, that it will be trails, and in these trails there will be a monuments and some secret place, maybe some restaurants, some view places, depend what the local guy or girl want to show to tourists.
Very cool.
His program.
Okay. And you said that you've interviewed some people already, and you yourself are a traveler. So what kind of feedback have you gotten from those early conversations?
The one feedback what I get from everyone is that they spend a lot of time to searching where to go to explore new city. Yes, they say about they use TripAdvisor, Google, a lot of apps and service, but it's the problem is staying, because okay, they know about these places, but they don't know from what to start, where to end, where to go. They just have a mess of some locations, and that's all. So this gets them bad.
Yeah, it can be quite overwhelming. That's what we were talking about before we started recording. I've had this experience as well. And you mentioned TripAdvisor and Google. So what other solutions are there already in place, and why do you think that they don't quite fit what travelers need today?
For example, I think the most close it's TripAdvisor, but in TripAdvisor people sell themselves like a guide. So they meet some people and go with there, show them everything around, and etc. But for example, I don't like this type of walking. I like explore by myself, and I want to go there, or want to rest, or I don't want to stop now. I want to be more flexible. So I hear also from one interview that they think same when they go to some new city. They want to be more flexible. Another competitor is locals, but with very similar to the guide, local for the city guide, the same. They meet the local people, they go with them, they explore new place, but they're not flexible. So this local people, same like city guide, they have some trail and they have some time limits. So it's not everyone like this.
Right. Okay, and how do you think the bootcamp program will help you move your idea forward?
I think at first it's develop me like a founder. So after this, I can move my idea faster because it's a new challenge for me to build in public. It's really nice idea to make all this by this way. So yes, developing myself to build in public. And second, it's to get some mails to a wait list, and it's like a lead because I have some interview. But I catch these people not in this place where people searching for a digital city guide. Yeah, it's travelers, forums or groups. But if someone will get to the my wait list, so I can really talk with the people who need digital city guide.
Awesome. And we'll show your landing page in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about the inspiration for the idea for City Scout. So you've traveled quite a bit, and I want to understand how your own travel experience has sort of informed or inspired this idea.
For example, last time I was in Limassol, Cyprus, and yes, I was searching for a place where to go around 1 hour, and after this I make this points on the map to go there. And I remember at once I stayed at one of this point and thinking, wow, maybe there is something interesting, but it was not on my map. But I go there, and really I meet there the greatest view, what gave me the best emotion on this trip. So I don't know about this place. There is no any information in Google about this place. But I found this place, and this gave me the best emotion on my trip.
That's really interesting. I do feel like there is an element, or there's a part of traveling that is just luck. You know, sometimes not everything is on the internet for people to uncover and find. And you mentioned that with City Scout, you want locals to sort of curate the experiences of the trails that are on the platform. Do you think that everyone will want to do that? Do you think that there will be some locals who say, oh, not all the foreigners should know about this really cool place over here? Is that one fear of yours?
I don't know. I don't need a lot of locals. I think few is more than enough.
Right.
Or maybe if a lot of people want to give the experience of traveling in their places to another people, yes, it's good. But I'm sure that will be some people who will love to do that, and also they will get a commission from their work. This is like a motivation. The first motivation is to share some amazing places in their cities, and another, yeah, it's money.
Cool. So you've added that monetization model will be a platform where the creators also get rewarded for this?
Yeah, sure. And actually, they need to build a nice trips, so get a nice review for this trip. Write a nice information about this trip to catch their customers. If we talk about monetization.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a really good idea. Let's take a quick look at the page you've made. Just a second. All right, so just the benefits that you've listed on City Scout: make emotions instead of hustle and bustle. So is there anything that you want to add to this, or do you want to share any impressions of the Momentum website creator?
Maybe I will add something after more interviews. But the most important idea of my app is to do a new adventure more easy. So I just want to remove all time loss and stress, everything what can give you some bad emotions. And about Momentum, yeah, it's a really cool thing. I don't know what will be with my page after this bootcamp will finish, but I want to move forward with this page and work on this project. It's very easy. It's really very easy. I don't know what to add. Let's see.
Awesome. All right, and you've also mentioned before that you'd like to improve as a founder by building in public, which is one of the core things in the bootcamp. Why is that? I guess, what do you hope to get out of that experience?
Most important for me is to get a new experience to build in public, because I'm really scared to do this. So I need to fight this. And only after that I will break some of my demons, what hold me to talk more about my startups. get some ideas, get some early adopters. So I should to fight this demon.
Right. I guess my only advice would be to not think about sharing everything with the whole wide world, but what you're sharing as a founder is a conversation with the travelers that you want to use City Scout. So speak with your network and make your posts with those people in mind, like you're just talking to another traveler and you're trying to share your experience as a traveler with them.
Yeah, nice idea.
That's all the questions I have for today, Andrew. Is there anything else you'd like to share about City Scout or your experience in the bootcamp so far?
About City Skies, you can follow me, and I will say more there in my feeds. And about Bootcamp, I'm really happy that I came here because for this moment, building public is the biggest challenge for me.
Awesome. Well, we've got your back. We'll help you as much as we can to bring City Scout to the masses. I will put the links to your site and your other social links in the description of this interview. And of course, we'll share it with you and the rest of our network as well. So thank you so much for taking this first step and having the interview with me. And we'll catch up with you at the end of the bootcamp, and hopefully you'll be, a happy public founder by then. Hi everyone, welcome to our fifth and final founder interview from the Paralect Startup Bootcamp Batch 1. I'm here with Brooke LeBlanc from Point 5, which is a startup we're going to talk about right now. So Brooke, how are you today?
I'm great, how are you?
Fantastic. Can you give us a one-line description of Point 5 and what is the idea all about?
Yeah, Point 5 is better health for the sober and sober curious.
Okay, and I read through your description on the Bootcamp website, and I have so many questions. So, what does BetterHelp look like? Are you thinking of an app, a community, a product? There's a lot of growth in the sober space right now.
Yes, we've seen it grow over 200% since I incorporated the company last summer, which is pretty shocking. And that's only going to continue over the next 10 years. So I'm excited to be building in the space. This will be an app. So we're building an iOS mobile app. And it's also a membership platform. So you'll subscribe to be a part of the community. You'll have access to other people who are using sobriety as a means to an end to achieve their health goals. So you'll join a cohort. So for example, if you're training for a half marathon, you'll join a cohort of other folks who are also like-minded and quitting or cutting back drinking in order to do so.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and especially for me because I'm really into running. But also I'm part of a running club that is created by a craft beer brand. So their thing is you go to a monthly run and you get a free craft beer afterwards. So I'm kind of in two camps where I want to be healthy, but I also still like beer. But there are a lot better non-alcoholic beers on the market now. So that's still an option. What inspired BetterHelp and Point 5? From your experience?
Yeah, so what inspired it? I've been working in tech for the past several years. So I've worked for early stage companies, both seed stage and Series A. So I've seen what it looks like to really grow a team from the ground up. And when you're in a sales function at a smaller organization, you work directly with product. So every single conversation you have with the customer gets recorded. You send clips, either competitor intel or just feedback you can go relay to the product team, and you send it internally. So that was a really exciting time to use that professional experience to contribute to becoming a founder now. However, on a personal note, I am over 2.5 years sober. So I really decided to blend my personal experience of being a consumer of non-alcoholic beverages, someone who's been just a fan of the space, and I really have helped support over 10 of my friends get sober. Actually, one of my friends yesterday had her 1-year mark, which was amazing, and we're celebrating tonight at a sober karaoke night in New York City. So it's really cool. It feels like this underground movement right now. There's a lot of energy towards it, a lot of companies starting to get built. And I really am excited to create a tech product where I can scale my efforts of someone who is on a mission to help improve people's lives through sobriety. And yeah, it's been a really amazing time to turn something that was really hard for me to get clean in the start. I felt like I had a little support around me, but that was of my own making because it was COVID 2020 New York City when I got sober. So we were in lockdown, all my friends moved away, my family lives in another state in the United States. So I really want to create a product that's going to be your accountability buddy and your partner and your support system as you get sober.
That's a really cool story, and kudos for going through that during the time that you did. That's a lot of willpower, and it says a lot about you. I guess since you have this experience in tech and now in sobriety, I wanted to get your opinion on this because it seems like there's a pretty strong dichotomy. So there's sort of like the conferences and the parties in San Francisco or wherever, where obviously there's an after party, there's usually good booze, or at least some booze, a lot of booze. And then on the other hand, there's sort of the, I don't know, health conscious, biohacking side of tech culture that's focused on being as healthy as we can, living as long as possible, eating very regimented, healthy diets. So what's your take on this? Obviously, you're happy that the healthy side is growing, but I'd love to get your opinion on this.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. It does feel like we're 1 foot in, 1 foot out to a new world, a world in which folks really care a lot about their health. They're aware of the consequences. So I know personally, before I got sober, I was probably about 8 years of a drinker. And a lot of the language that we throw around is that we'll either have a hangover the next day, and that's a consequence, or our liver is going to be hurting. And that's such an abstract concept because you don't see your liver, you don't feel your liver unless something's actually wrong. And that's usually something that there's a cognitive dissonance from the point of when you're 20 years old and you open a beer and have a drink to when you have a liver issue and you might be in your 40s or 50s, a little bit more mature in your life. So I feel like there's this quake of folks jumping from the party scene to more of the biohacking scene because of this new science that's coming out. The amount of folks who have come to me about Andrew Huberman's podcast is pretty shocking in the best way possible because he took 2 hours to break down in a very scientific way, non-biased as much as possible, just what is healthy for your body and what are the true effects of drinking. And this is science that I wish I had, 8 years ago, 10 years ago when I first started drinking. And to your point, in the tech space specifically, there's a meme going around that there's the tech broification of sobriety. So it's now become a trend to be an early adopter of sobriety as if it's a new thing. And listen, I'm all for it because it pushes things in the direction that I want it to push in, which is more awareness over what we're doing to our bodies. I recently had 2 kombuchas with a friend and woke up hungover the next day. I was tired, groggy, and I ran to the cafe to grab a breakfast burrito and couldn't realize that I was nauseous, and then I tracked it back to the kombucha. So it's really shocking when you eliminate all these things from your diet and your lifestyle, and then you go back in some degree because kombucha is 0.5 ABV, hence the name of my company. So it's really fascinating to see what we do to our bodies and why. And one more point with the Andrew Huberman podcast, actually, Mark Andreessen, one of the more powerful, well-known figures in our space, tweeted last week that he had gone sober, and it was because of the Andrew Huberman podcast, and he's toying with the idea. So that's a trend that I'm seeing a lot. A lot of people aren't even adopting the word sober because it feels very binary, like you do everything or you do nothing, and it's very daunting as a young person because I hopefully have another 70 strong years left in my life. And how am I going to commit to something now to say, oh, for the next 70 years, I'm not going to drink? Like, that feels very heavy. And so a lot of folks are just saying they're not drinking. And that's what Mark Andreessen explained. He said he had drank, the majority of his life. He loves whiskey. He's not happy about this decision, but he just feels good. So he's just going to go forward with it. And that's a huge trend that I'm seeing too. And all of that contributes to hopefully the early customers that we'll have on our platform, because they're early adopters. They're already tapped in. I'm currently wearing a Whoop and an Oura ring on our call right now. So I'm a part of that group. So I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible in my answer, but it's an interesting phenomenon, and it's something that makes me really proud to see. And I just get a good laugh every time I see a meme.
Right. There's been a lot of talk about it. And I'm curious, I guess, what you talked about the growth in the space over the last few years, and you're going to be a part of that. And so what other solutions are on the market? I guess there's a lot of NA drinks. There's Liquid Death, which is just water in a can, which is a ridiculously successful company in the US market and maybe in others, I'm not sure. But in terms of apps and software platforms or community-based platforms, are there other ones that you're looking at as competitors, as inspiration, anything like that?
Yes. So there are a few. One of the most successful platforms is in farthest along in its fundraising journey, and therefore largest in terms of user base, is called Monument. And they help the recovery side of the market. So they connect folks with therapists and outpatient care, potential rehab facilities, and medication. If you have a physical dependency to alcohol as a substance, they're, to my knowledge, Series B, backed by Lingoers, Hippo, and other really amazing venture firms. They might have raised again now, but that's to my knowledge. And so they're wildly successful in proving out the use case in this market, which is there's a real demand for a solution that will just help people and support them on their journey. The differentiation point between Monument and Point 5 is that we focus more on the lifestyle side of going sober, not as much the recovery side. However, I have spoken to dozens of folks who've reached out and deeply resonate with their story and understand the need for a solution in that space. So Monument is a great tool to do that if you're seeking help on that side of the space. And they also recently acquired a company called Tempest, which is a women's recovery platform. So that founder, I recently listened to a podcast of hers. She's a huge inspiration just as a human being and as an exited founder in the space and someone who's an early adopter. So really anyone who was early on this trend, who's been really digesting what sobriety looks like, what does that mean for the next, not one generation, because I'm the eldest Gen Z you'll find out there on the market, but what does it look like for Gen Alpha and all the coming generations? And what happens? Is alcohol similar to cigarettes? Is it going to evolve? It's a substance that's been around for thousands of years in other parts of the world. What is the history of drinking? What is the future of drinking? So I really love to socialize with folks who are on the forefront of this movement in the beverage space, in the tech space, and everything in between. Another mind that I really have enjoyed like going back and forth with, someone who I think is very smart in the space. Her name is Jen Batchelor, and she's the beverage founder of Ken Euphorics. She is whip smart and very forward thinking on this space. And I really, really admire some of the work she does. She has a brain imaging lab separate from their beverage. And this is just internal, where they can measure in your brain the effects of drinking, which is really the organ that gets most impacted. So it's not really our liver. It's not really our, our hangover, like, oh, we have a headache. That's an effect of affecting our brain health. So I think what they're doing is really smart. There's a lot of smart people. I could ramble off, but those are just a few that come to mind.
Right on. Well, yeah, it sounds like you have a really comprehensive understanding of the market and what you want to add to it. So I'm curious now, how do you think the bootcamp will help you move the idea forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, in day one, your team whipped up Victoria. She's amazing. She whipped up a landing page because I told her that right now we're in stealth and we don't have a landing page out right now. So we're that early, but we're also far along in the sense of being pretty well networked, working on getting our funding pretty soon, which is exciting, and building out our team. So really the missing pieces are just conveying this vision and bringing it to life. So I'm excited to keep moving forward in the bootcamp, and just recruiting more people to our mission, getting more email signups, because we can always accept people on the wait list and be starting user interviews for research. So it's never too early to get out there and speak to our potential end customer, especially to inform us as we start to build the product once we've closed our round.
Awesome. Well, that is all the questions I have for today. We'll be back to do hopefully another interview at the end of the bootcamp to find out how the 0.5 has moved along and what's next for you as you move along your founder journey. So thank you so much for opening your experience and your idea to us at Paralect and the wider world.
Of course. Thank you for having me.